Hello, everyone. While we're waiting for people to filter in, I figured I would mention past and upcoming webinars. Um, we have another webinar upcoming in December that is going to be for LandLab users and developers. It's going to be a coffee hour, kind of an informal presentation of the latest and greatest with LandLab and a chance to meet your fellow LandLab enthusiasts. So mark your calendars for that. If you have missed past webinars and you want to watch them, we record nearly all of them. And you can find the recordings on the CSDMS webinar if you go to the CSDMS homepage, Education Webinars. It takes you to this page. And you can page down to find previous ones. So for example, last month we had a great webinar from Andreas Dedner and Robert Klefkorn on their package Dune Fem, which was really cool. It included a integration with LandLab example. And we've had a whole variety of great webinars over the past year or so. So I encourage you to check those out. Here, okay. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm Greg Tucker. I'm the director of the CSDMS integration facility, and this webinar is going to be a practical overview of how to contribute to one of the CSDMS open source code and documentation repositories. The spirit in which we're offering this is the spirit in which CSDMS has always been designed and intended. That is a modeling system for the Earth's surface that is by and for the research and education community. So CSDMS has always had this grand vision of a modeling system that is modular and that encompasses all the complex and intricate and fascinating processes that shape Earth's surface. And it's always been a really ambitious vision. And in fact, a vision that, no small group of people by themselves is ever going to be able to carry out. It has to be a community-wide effort. And so we have products and programs that involve large segments of the research community, including, for example, the basic model interface. So those of you interested in the basic model interface may have noticed there's been a really lively discussion on the CSDMS forum lately, for example, about designing what a version 3 of the basic model interface will look like. In addition, some of you know about or use or even contribute to LandLab. So we hit a neat milestone this year, over 100 peer-reviewed published papers using LandLab literally across the world and across a really wide spectrum of different kinds of applications. And that's great to see. We've also had contributions to LandLab and other packages from a wide range of people, all kinds of different components and utilities and capabilities. And that's what we're after. But the challenge is if you want to contribute to an open source code repository, there's some mechanics that you need to understand in order to make that happen. And so really the point of this webinar is to walk you through the steps that are involved in going from having an idea about some improvement or new capability or new component that you want to contribute all the way through having that become part of one of the open source repositories. And we're going to use LandLab as an example here because that's one of the ones that gets the most interesting contributions. With me today, we have members of the integration facility team who are going to try to keep what I tell you accurate by hopefully interrupting me if I say something wrong, and are here to answer your questions. So I encourage anybody to jump in with questions as we go. I'm hoping my colleagues will kind of keep an eye on the chat and on raised hands and so on. We're happy to, any questions you have is all good. So, okay. So as I said, this is going to really be about the mechanics of doing it. So let's suppose I have some idea about some edit I want to make to an open source repository. The process usually starts with making an issue if there isn't one already. So let's suppose that I go to LandLab. This is the LandLab GitHub website. And I should say throughout this webinar, I'm assuming that you're basically familiar with the Git version control system and how to use that. And you have some familiarity with GitHub, which of course is a hosting platform for Git-based version control repositories. It's not the only one. There's others out there. Some of you may use Bitbucket and other ones, but Git is the version control system and GitHub is the hosting platform that adds some capabilities. And that's the one that CSDMS uses. So if we go to the LandLab GitHub site, you see that there are a variety of tabs here. We have code, which is the default landing page. We have issues, pull requests, discussions, and so on. And I'm going to start with the idea that there is an issue that I want to raise about something having to do with the source code. And in particular, the issue I'm going to use as an example here has to do with a piece of documentation about LandLab. So I'm going to jump over for a second to the LandLab documentation page. This is landlab.csdms.io. And I'm going to navigate to one of the tutorials. So I go to this tutorials tab. Let's go to the tutorials gallery. Oh, guess my connection's a little bit slow. Okay. And I happen to notice that in one of these tutorials, which is called Fault Scarp, there is a typo in the math. If I page down through this notebook, it's using it's basically solving a diffusion equation that's meant to represent soil creep on hill slopes. And so the notebook starts off introducing readers to the math. We have a mass conservation law, and we have a soil flux law, and then we put the two of them together into a comprehensive 2D diffusion equation. But this minus sign here should not be there. That's a typo. So since that's going to be misleading to people who read it, we should fix that. So that's the issue I want to address in this example. Let me go back to my checklist. I should say that this notebook is available to anybody who wants to follow along. Maybe somebody could post the link to the notebook in the chat if anybody wants to download it and look at it. It's not anything fancy. It's just a list of sort of a checklist of things we're going to do. So, okay, step one, I want to make an issue that points out that we have a typo that should be fixed. So I will go to the Issues tab on the LandLab GitHub repository. There's a nice big green button that says New Issue. So I click New Issue. I can give it a title. I'll call it Fix Typos. Typos. I saw another one. There's two of them. In Fault Scarp tutorial. Down here, I can add a description. There is an incorrect minus sign in the diffusion equation, which should be removed. Okay, so this is just a short description of the issue that needs to be addressed. And I will click Create Issue. Okay, so if I go back to the issues page, we can see there's now issue number 2274. We'll try to remember that number to fix typos in this tutorial. The point of making an issue is partly that I may not have time or ability or interest in fixing it, but if I notice it, at least I can put it out there so that hopefully somebody who's interested in making sure that issues like this don't persist will be able to go in and fix it. Okay, so that's step one. We made an issue. Now, next thing I want to do is I need to get a hold of the copy of the whole code and documentation base. And some of you may already have this. If you don't, the usual way to do it is to make a fork of the LandLab repository. So what does that mean? If I go to the LandLab GitHub page. This is the location of the main code and documentation base for LandLab. One of the things the GitHub platform allows me to do is to make what's called a fork, which is really a copy of that whole code base that lives on my own GitHub account rather than on the LandLab organization's account. So if I go back to code here, let's see, how do I do this? Maybe one of my colleagues can remind me how we do a fork of a repository. Oh, here it is.
Yep, there's the button.
This button right here.
Yeah.
So we can see that 351 people have forked this particular repository. So if I click this button, it will create essentially a copy of the whole code repository under my own user space. So I've already done this, so I'm not going to do it again. Instead, I'll switch over to a tab that looks really similar, except now if you notice in the upper left, the organization is not LandLab, but it's me. It's my own personal GitHub account. So again, this is a complete copy of all the LandLab code and documentation, except that it lives under my own GitHub user account. And this is the version that I'm going to work on initially. So let's go back to our checklist for a sec.
Oh, and the big thing is, most people don't have permissions to write to the LandLab organization. So that's why I have to create a fork.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, so now what I want to do is there's not an easy way for me to do any editing of code or documentation on the GitHub platform itself. So I want to make a copy that's on my own computer and work with that copy. So that means in GitHub speak, in Git speak, really, I'm going to clone my fork. And the way to do that is something that needs me to go to my local computer and type commands. So hopefully everybody can see that I've got a terminal window here. That visible?
Yes.
Okay. So I have here, let me page up a second. I'm going to go to, so I'm in a repository, a folder on my computer that I made for this webinar. I like to use the command line version of Git. I know some people like the GitHub app, which has various features. That's cool. If you know how to do that, that's great. I'm going to show you the command line way to do this. And that works by issuing Git commands. In this case, it's Git clone. And then I need to paste in the web address that I'm going to clone, which is what I want to clone is my fork. Right? So I want to go to my fork, which is here on my GitHub account, LandLab, and I want to clone it. How do I do that? Well, there's a big fat green code button. I click a little arrow. And down here, you see this says clone. I'm going to copy the address. Now, the way I do this depends a little bit on how it's set up. We usually recommend setting it up with SSH. So that's how I'm going to do it. Once I click this, it copies this gobbledygook to my clipboard. I can go back to my command window and just paste it there. So when I run that command, it will download a complete copy of the code and documentation repository onto my local computer, which happens to be a 2019 vintage MacBook Pro. Whatever, right? MacBook Pro. So I'm not actually going to run this function because I've already done it. When I run it though, and I look inside my folder, I see that there is now a new folder called LandLab. And that is the top level of the repository. So that's my local copy of LandLab. I'm going to navigate into it. Okay, check. So I have now cloned the repository. Let's page down to the next item. All right, now, the way we do things is we always do development on branches. So a branch is a copy of the code that is designed to be a kind of a special side piece that you're working on. It's work in progress, right? It's like as if you were, writing a paper or something, and you have the version that you've got so far, your draft, you set that one aside and you have another version that you're actively working on. And the idea of version control, of course, is when I'm ready to take the changes I've made, I merge them back into my main or master version, right? So this is carving off a special version to take apart and work on. This is something we do with Git commands. Again, I'm assuming you're all familiar with the basics of Git. What I need to do here is to create a new branch and give it a name. The way I like to make a new branch is to issue the git command git checkout -b. That means check out a new branch, and then I need to give it a name. The naming convention we've been using is to give your initials, followed by a slash, followed by something that indicates something about the purpose of the change that you're making. In this case, fix typo in, I'll just call it FS for fault scarp tutorial. Okay, so now I'm ready to work on this new branch. Initially, the branch is exactly identical to the master branch that I started from. Now I'm going to make a change. So because this is a Jupyter notebook I want to change, I can open it up in my, my Jupyter Lab session here. So I'll go ahead and do that. Go back up here, go into Land Lab. Here's where a little bit of familiarity with the Land Lab organizational structure helps. I happen to know that what I'm looking for is under Docs. From Docs, it's under Source. From Source, it's under Tutorials. And then it's under Fault Scarp. And there's the notebook that I want to modify. Open this up, give myself a little room to work with. Page down. And here's the line I want to fix. It's that minus sign. That's the offending thing. So I'm going to double click this. Here's that minus sign. No, that's not the minus sign. Where's the minus sign I don't like? Here it is. Take that out. And let's see, did that work? Yes, got rid of the minus sign. Cool. Now, while we're at it, I happen to notice somewhere there was a use of the word let's without an apostrophe. So let me see if I can find that. If I can't find it, we'll just leave that for next time. Here it is. This is a little bit silly, but why not go with grammar? Okay, so I have made 2 small changes. I'm going to save it. One thing to point out, if you ever find yourself editing a Jupyter notebook as part of the tutorial collection or the teaching collection, our practice is to store them in the repository in their unrun mode. So notice that none of these cells have been run, they're empty. And that's because when you run cells, often they'll create big images or other kinds of storage hungry, often binary format things that can clutter up the repository. So we like to keep it clean with unrun notebooks. Okay, so I've made my change. Now what I want to do is back in Git, I want to commit that little change that I made. So I always like to know what the latest status of things is by typing git status. Okay, interestingly, it tells me there's a whole bunch of extra files which came from running a test that I did a few minutes ago. We can ignore that. The really key thing is this file that I've changed here. So this is the one that I want to add. So I say git add, name of the file that I just changed. And then I'll commit that change. So git commit, I'll give it a little message with -m, and the message will be fix typo in notebook. Okay, great. So now the copy of LandLab on my local computer is up to date with the change I wanted to make. The next thing I need to do is send that change back to the cloud, back to my fork, which is living in my user space on GitHub. And of course, the way to do that is with git push. Git push. Oh, hang on. Hang on. Let's not get carried away. I'm forgetting this important step before I'm ready to push any of my changes. Let's go back to my little checklist here. So I created a branch and I made edits. Now, before I push anything up, I want to make sure I haven't broken anything. And there's a lot of things that I could break. Now, in this case, it's pretty clear that I haven't broken anything because all I did was change a markdown cell in a notebook. But let's pretend that I was doing something more sophisticated involving, let's say, editing code. Well, one of the things I would want to make sure is that any code I've modified is in a nice, clean, consistent format and layout. In other words, that it doesn't contain what we sometimes call lint. So we have delinting programs that I happen to have installed on my local machine. I want to make sure that I haven't inadvertently messed up any formatting. There's a couple ways I could do this. I can run black, which will clean up any code files I might have edited. And I can run flake 8, which will make sure things like, lines aren't too long in the code file and so on. Now, in this particular case, again, I haven't changed any code, so I don't need to do that. But if you were changing code, you would want to do that. Once you're satisfied that your code is clean and well formatted, the next thing is to make a little bit of a news fragment file. So what's news fragment? The idea here is we want to keep track of all the changes that have been made to a product like LandLab between releases, from one release to the next, so we can have a list of what's new in a new release. Now, what I've just done isn't a big deal, but it's still a change, and we want to note it. And the way we keep track of that is with a system that uses what are called news fragments, which are just tiny little files that contain one line of text that explain what each change is at a high level. So if you go to the LandLab main folder, so let's see, where am I now? I am still in the main LandLab folder. If I navigate to the subfolder called News and look at what files are there, could make this text a little bit bigger to make it more visible. You notice there's a collection of files that have a number followed by a word like misc, feature, and bug fix. Each of these is what's called a news fragment. Let's say I look inside this one 2207.bugfix. It says fixed an issue where the location of the lower left corner was being written by Esri ASCII dump. Okay, so that's a concise explanation of a change that was made in some project. The number here, 2207, refers to the issue that it addresses, right? It's the issue number, not the PR number. So in our case, we have to look back and see what is the number of the issue we're addressing. So I'll go back to the LandLab folder, look at issues. There's the issue I added. It's number 2274. So what I need to do is make a little file called 2274, and then I have to give it a file extension that indicates what kind of a change am I making. Well, here are some options. If I go back to our checklist here, there's basically 5 options here. Bug fix, if you fixed a bug. Doc, if you're doing something related to documentation. Feature, if you've added a new component or utility or capability. Removal, I don't know that we've ever used, but that's if something gets taken away. And misc, miscellaneous, for everything else. In our case, we have a doc improvement. So I'm going to make a little file called, what did I say, 2278, 2274, 2274.doc. And I'm going to be old-fashioned and use the VI editor. So 2274.doc. And in it, I will put fix typos in the Vault Scarp tutorial notebook. And I guess to be consistent with that other one, I should use past tense. We'll say fixed. And save it and list. And now we have a new file, 2274.doc. So I want to add that. So git add 2274 and then commit that change. Git commit -m add news frag. Okay, good. I have my news fragment done. Let's go back to the checklist. Next step, we have run the tests. So in my case, all I did was change a little teeny piece of the documentation. Like literally, I changed 2 characters. But in general, if you're doing something a little more substantive, it's really important to test, especially if you're doing code, but even if you're just doing documentation, to test that the code all runs correctly and that the documentation has built okay, that the notebooks and tutorials all run successfully without generating errors, and so on. That's a process that's called continuous integration. And it's a really key process in open source software like CSDMS products, including LandLab, because it's what ensures that the code base has the highest quality possible and that stuff isn't breaking or changing, and we're not accidentally introducing new bugs when we're trying to fix old bugs and that kind of thing, right? So Eric has set up a system for us, fortunately, where the process of running tests is pretty straightforward, though it can sometimes be a little bit time consuming. There is a thing that has been installed. I think it gets installed automatically when I do a developer install of LandLab, called Nox. That's a system for running tests. And there are 5 sets of tests we're going to run. I'm going to start this one, Nox-S test, which will run all the code tests. These are unit tests and doc tests and things that have already been built into the code base that people tend to write as they write, for example, new components. So let me get that cooking in a folder here. So I have to go back to the LandLab main folder and I run Nox-S test. And it'll give me a message saying I'm running session test. It's going to start putting together a virtual environment, so it'll take a few minutes to crank through. Another set of tests is a linting set of tests. So let's see here. I'm going to run those. I'm in the right folder. So I'm going to run Nox-est lint. This is always one of my favorites because it's usually pretty satisfying if you've done your delinting. This is where it's going to run these 2 linters that I mentioned, black and flake8, on all the code files, as well as on the code inside the Jupyter notebooks, all the tutorials and things like that, to make sure everything is okay. Of course, you get this really satisfying green past label, so it's kind of nice to watch that all unfold. You can see in the printout here some of the things it's looking at, right? Check file names for white space, check consistent heading levels, and various other kinds of things. Okay, yay. So I get a little green message down here. Session lint was successful. All right, what else have we got? There's a little test called Town Crier that just makes sure I did a news frag and that I did it correctly. I used one of the approved names. So let's run that one. Nox-S Town Crier, which is the name of the package that we use for news fragments. Oh, what did I do?
Hey, Greg.
Yes, help.
I think you named the file incorrectly. It should be have an S at the end.
Docs,
Doc.
plural. Thank you.
Sorry,
Okay.
it's very particular.
All right, so let's go fix that. So I'm going to rename 274 doc to 2274 docs, plural. And let me add that Oh, no, hang on. That's not going to work, right? Because I haven't told Git about it. Let me move it back again. So this is a good example of how you can have a lot of experience with this and still make mistakes, which I do all the time. I'm going to move it back. Now I'm going to use git move, which is going to get renaming this file. Otherwise, it's going to be confused. Doc for docs, plural. Now, if I and git commit with a message, fix name of news frag file. Okay, this is why we have these tests. So let me run that that town crier test again. Knox. Where is it? There, Knox-S town crier. And I'm in the wrong folder, so let's go back up to the LandLab main folder and try that again. Yay, session town crier was successful. Okay, so lint worked, town crier worked, test is still in progress. We've got 2 more, test notebooks and build docs. And actually, I'm gonna go ahead and modify this to fix an error I made in calling that doc when it should be docs, plural. And I believe I discovered yesterday that this is actually called docs build. We'll verify that in a minute. So this is all a live demonstration of how this process is iterative. So Knox-S docs build. Okay, and off we go. What this is going to do is going to take the whole documentation system, strip out the headers from code files to format them nicely for the web-based documentation, stitch together all the different documentation files, make sure there are no errors in that. There shouldn't be because I haven't touched anything except a little bit of text, but I'm just going to make sure. Then in yet a third window, while that's going, I'll do the last test, which is the notebooks. Knox-S test-notebooks. What this is going to do is take all of the Jupyter Notebook tutorials and teaching resources and simply run them and verify that there's no errors generated. So for example, if somebody had written a notebook using some invalid syntax, that would generate an error and we wouldn't want that. So this is really making sure that all of these teaching and learning resources are up to date and actually work. And that'll take a few minutes. While we're waiting for that, let me point out that this list of available tests is available in the LandLab documentation. So if I go to this link here, it's listed under the developer install page. So if you're contributing material to LandLab, for example, you would have done a developer install of LandLab so you can actually get in and edit the files. So if I page down toward the bottom of this page, I see this section called Developer Tools that lists these 5 different tests that I can run. Okay, let's go back and see how we're doing with the code tests. They're still running. If I expand this window a little bit, you can see it's got a ways to go. There's this whole long list of one-liners, each of which represents running one test file. So I'll just highlight one to give you a sense of what this is. Tests, components, flexure, testflexure.py. So somewhere in the code base under test, there's a file called testflexure.py, whose job it is to test the flexure component. And it happens to have a function called test one load bench. And so that's been run and it passed. There's so many tests in the code base that it does take a while to run them all. So this is going to take a little bit of time. So what I'm going to do now is actually switch over to another. Oh, look, that looks good. Sometimes they go pretty quickly. I'm going to switch over though to another pull request that I did yesterday as another demonstration of how this process works. Let me first illustrate though what I would do next once my tests pass. I won't actually do it yet, but I'll show you what it is. So let's see. So here my my little test here has passed. I'm going to clear this window so we have some space. Once I am happy, all the tests have passed. I'm all ready to, I think my code is clean and ready to go. So we're going to move on to the next step in the checklist. We're on the step now, push to your remote fork. What that means is I want to take the changes that are on my little laptop here and send them to the cloud to my account on GitHub. And of course, the way I do that is with a git push command. So first, let me do I'm going to issue git branch to remind myself what I called this little branch I'm working on. Okay, there's the name. That's the branch I'm working on, GT fix typo in FS tutorial. That's what I want to push. So I would issue the command git push. I'm pushing to the origin, which is the cloud, basically.
Are you sure it's origin on your laptop? Maybe check the remotes, like do a git remote -v.
Okay, git remote -v.
Yep, okay, that's yours.
Okay, what else would be possible with that?
The upstream remote, which is under the LAN lab organization. And you'd need that if you wanted to sync changes from the upstream repository. So one thing I'm a little worried about is that your fork, because you made it a while ago, may be out of sync with the upstream LAN lab repository. We'll see what happens.
No, I actually did a fresh fork last
good.
night, so it should be up to date.
Okay.
I had a fork from 2015.
Yeah, that happens. Yeah.
I deleted it. I found out how to delete it. You can do that.
Yeah.
Just GitHub will make you like really swear that you really, really mean it, which is good. Okay, so I'm going to do git push origin and the name of my fork, fix typo in FS tutorial. Now, I shouldn't do this until all my tests have passed and they're still running. My code tests are at 22%. My notebook tests are doing whatever it is they're doing. But that's okay. If I do it anyway, it's not an unrecoverable error, as you'll see. So I'm just going to go ahead and do it since I'm confident that I haven't broken any code because I didn't change any code. And what did I do? Push origin. With some refs, source ref spec in does not match any.
Greg, just do a git push.
Git push. And that'll push my current branch.
It'll tell you the command that yeah. So that's the command you needed to do. You forgot the set.
Okay. Set upstream origin. Okay, great. Yay. Thank you, Eric. And thank you, Git documentation. Now I have to put in my key. Okay, so I have now pushed to my fork here. Now this is cool because GitHub has noticed that I did this 4 seconds ago. It recognizes that I just pushed this branch called GT fix typo in FS tutorial. Now I'm ready to do a pull request. Let's go back to the checklist just to make sure. Okay, push to your remote fork and activate a pull request. So this is an important moment. I am ready to actually say, hey, Land Lab organization, I have something new and wonderful for you. So I will click this button, compare and pull request. Now notice something that just happened. My web browser is now pointed not at my own GitHub space, but at the Land Lab organization here. So it's taken me to the Land Lab organization, which is where I'm issuing this pull request. First thing I do is give my pull request a title. I'll give it something a little bit more reader friendly than this. fix typos in fault scarp tutorial. And then I go down to the description. So Eric has helpfully set this up so that it's already pre-populated with some guidelines about what makes a good pull request. So I could delete this to add my own description, or I could keep it. I'll just keep it. Why not? It gives me a checklist as well. And then down here, a space to describe what I'm doing. So I'm going to delete that placeholder and describe the pull request. This PR fixes a couple of typos in the tutorial notebook called Vault Scarp. That's probably all I really need. The last part of the pull request information is this section called related issues, which is where I reference the issue that I started off with. And what I'm going to do is just write closes number 2274, which is the issue I posted a few minutes ago. And my understanding is here, but correct me if I'm wrong, folks, that if I do that, once this is merged, it'll automatically close that issue. So it won't be sitting there anymore. Is that right?
Yeah. I think there's a couple different keywords you can use. I think closes is included. I usually use something like fixed or resolved. I know those are also there.
Okay, cool. So let's see. I can now, first I want to make sure this is a draft pull request because it's not ready for prime time until all the tests have run on this remote platform. I'm going to click the draft pull request button. And here we go. So here's all the text of the description. And the text includes a checklist. So I can go through the checklist just to make sure. So I just opened up this PR or pull request in draft mode. Yes. It addresses a single feature fix or issue. Yes. It has been linted. Yes. The test passed locally. Well, not quite yet. We'll leave that one for now. Documentation builds without errors. Yeah, the documentation went. Okay, so I can check that. I created a news fragment, check. Relevant doc strings, examples, or changelog entries have been updated. Yeah, pretty much. Related issues or discussions are linked. Yes, I said closes number 2274. So everything is done except the local test pass. All right, so if I page down, I see the description that I added, the related issues, and then there's a list of all the commits. So you saw me do this. I had a commit on change, what is this about? Oh, interesting. This also includes other changes that I did for another thing. So there we go. Here are the ones I did locally. Fix typo in notebook, add newsfrag, fix name of newsfrag file. I page down further, and what I see is a set of tests that are running in the cloud on the GitHub servers. These are tests that Eric set up that are automatically run whenever you do a pull request. This little circle shows the status of my tests. Green means a test is passed. Red means a test has failed. Brown means it's still pending. And gray means we're going to skip it until we get to an actual full-on, no longer draft pull request. So let's see, what have I got? I can see there's a couple of tests in progress. And there's a documentation build. That's essentially duplicating the one that I already ran locally. There's another build test going on here. If I page down, there's checking for a changelog entry, which passed. So what I need to do now is be patient and wait till all these remote tests have finished, which can take, half an hour or something like that. Okay, let me pause and see if there's any questions at this point. All right, carrying on. You're only being very patient. I realize this is very technical, but we are really close now to actually having a new thing added, or really a very simple typo fix added to the land lab repository. Now, though, let me change over to a different one that I did last night. And so the tests in theory have all run. So I ended up modifying it again this morning. So we'll see. I go back to the pull request tab. And where is it here? So there is a pull request called update the soil creep parameter in depth dependent linear diffuser. This was a slightly more involved pull request. It actually involved changing a little bit of code. The issue at hand had to do with a parameter that was misleadingly named, and we wanted to change the name of that parameter to something that was more consistent with what the actual mathematics behind it were. So here's the pull request. You can see that I've checked off all the things in the checklist. I have a description of what the issue was. I have a reference to the actual GitHub issue, which happened to be number 2258. There's a list of things that were changed. And then we have a coverage report. Let me pause here and say, what's a coverage report? Well, coverage refers to the percent of the lines of code that are tested, that are actually run at least once when you run the tests. Ideally, you want a code to have 100% of its lines of code be executed at least once when you run a battery of tests. In our case, we're not at that. We're at 80%, which is better than 70%. Let's see if I page down further. So here's an interesting example. So in this case, I had forgotten to add tests for the lines of code that I added. So there were a couple of lines of code I added that were no longer tested. So I had to go back after I had put in this draft pull request and do some additional fidgeting around and adding a couple of tests for them. So here I have this commit message called add test for parameter handler. So now we have a situation where the tests have all run, and you see that under all checks have passed, there's this nice green thing here. So that means finally, this particular pull request is ready for a code review, and that's the next step. So I'm going to click the ready for review button. So that means, hey, I'm asking somebody to do a review of this. Now, when I do that, there'll be automatic emails sent to various members of the development team. But it's also nice if I can add a little comment that asks people to please review my code. And if I have particular people in mind, maybe they're colleagues at other institutions around the world who have an interest in this particular thing that I'm doing and are knowledgeable about the code base, it would be great to ask them to have a look at it. In this case, I'm going to say, hi, and I'll tag my colleagues in the integration facility, Tian and Mark and Eric, by their GitHub username and say, how about, could one of you please do a review of this pull request? And I'll add that as a comment. All right. So I'd like to ask Eric now if you can kind of help walk us through the basic steps in the review process. How would you do a code review here?
Hold on, Graham. I'm trying to get my camera working here. There we go. All right.
And I
Want
could
me to
pass
do like a
the
real
screen
review
share
of this,
to
Greg?
you. Do you want me to pass the screen share to you, or do you want to just point me to things?
Yeah, maybe. I guess you could. Yeah, can I share my screen? And my window. There we go. So can you see the land lab repository?
Yep.
Yeah, good. All right, so which one do you want me to look at, Greg? The fix or update soil creep parameter?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Okay. I haven't looked at it, so what I would usually do is pop over to the files changed and look at it. So well actually here, the first thing I would do is oh, I'm not logged in. Here, I'm gonna switch screens to one where I'm logged in. At least I'm gonna try to. There we go. Okay, now you can see it, but it's all black. So this should be the same page as we were on before. So I would go to pull requests, and then I will go to your pull request. And I think, just for fun, I'm going to see what Copilot does. And we'll have it review it to start with. But while we're waiting for that, I would go through it. Make sure everything looks good. Do you want me to actually make changes, request changes, Greg, or do you want me to just go for it?
Sure. Yeah, make it realistic. I mean,
Okay,
this
sure.
is real because you haven't seen this before.
Yeah, I would say so let's move the deprecated tag into the description. It doesn't really belong up there. So we could do so I would highlight this. And then I'd replace, yeah, get rid of this, and I would suggest you put it here. And I would turn this to optional. Then I would click start a review. So that would be one thing. And you've added tests, so that's very good. I'm not going to look too closely to that, but they look good. I would say let's switch this up a little bit, Greg. You've got a temporary variable that we don't need to have. So I would say maybe fix it like this. And move that into the body there like that. But I will leave it up to you to actually do the changes. I'm just gonna quickly write it here. So maybe something like that. But otherwise, it looks good. And so I would finish the review. And I would actually just, okay, I'm going to click request changes. And say, Greg, looks good. Changes. And then submit the review. Then Greg, you should get an email with, I think, with that it has been reviewed and any changes that you need to make. Oh, and you should also, I guess I didn't say this in the review, but of course, you should try to fix this test that the coverage that's not passing. So that's something you'll need to do. But I'm not sure that that would be involved with the review. You would just see it in that comment by code coverage. And actually, I'm curious what the Copilot did. Oh, Copilot says it looks good, I believe. So anyway, so that's it. So that's what I would do, Greg. And then so that should send back to you, and then you can make those changes. And then when you do and it looks good, I'd hit the merge button and be part of LandLab.
That's great. Thanks, Eric. So you can see it's
Yeah.
an iterative process. So usually it's like submitting a journal article, except maybe a little bit less intense. You can see Eric is very friendly. He's not reviewer 2. It's more like reviewer 1 that we
Yeah,
all
for
dream
sure.
of. And so I would go in and make those changes and ping him again. And when he's satisfied, he has the supreme power as a member of the Land Lab GitHub organization to approve and then merge the changes. And once that happens, this change is now part of the main development branch on Land Lab and will be included in the next official update. Wow, nice. So hopefully this gives everybody a sense of the mechanics of how this process works. It's a little bit involved, you're running tests, you're managing the usual GitHub or Git commands of adding and committing and pushing to your remote repository and so on. But it's not impossible. It's not crazy. You don't need to be, an arcane wizard to do it. Anybody can do it. And as I said, these code repositories are really for the whole community, and we encourage everybody to be posting issues, proposing new and wonderful components and capabilities and things like that. And hopefully this gives you a sense of what the process is behind all that. So we're almost at the top of the hour, but I'm happy to stick around as long as people want to answer any questions that have come up. I see in the chat that Surdoy had a question about what's the sort of first point of contact. And it can either be, as Mark points out, or Eric points out, it's either posting an issue or emailing one of the development team. Depends a little bit on the scale of what you're doing. If you're interested in developing a new component, and especially if you want guidance on things like how to design and lay out a component, then it's probably good to contact somebody who's done it a bunch before and can provide advice. Okay, so we've hit the top of the hour. I think we'll call it there. Thanks for joining us. If you're interested in a copy of this checklist, do we have the? Yeah, you can. That's been posted in the chat. Maybe we can post it again if anybody came late and they missed it. Now,
Greg, we can post it with the video as materials with the video.
oh, great. That's a really good idea. Thanks, Lynn. Okay, thanks everybody. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.